So, good evening and welcome once again. Good evening, Sagar.
Good evening, Kalpesh. How are you?
Very, very good. How are you doing?
Awesome.
So, great. And, I think, Sagar, time flies. Today we're already on the sixth week of, discussing on building productivity mindset. And I think it's been a beautiful journey where,
Absolutely.
we started with the whole thought of why is quality important or why is a productivity mindset important, and then the actual thought of how do you do that. So actually a step by step guide for everyone to look at these things and actually have an actionable with regards to how do you actually implement these practices and these tools into your real life and your production floors and your services to make a difference. So before we go ahead for today, Sagar, I want to just give a quick recap to all our friends and audiences who are here. So, we started talking and deliberating a lot with regards to why productivity mindset, what kind of difference it makes. What is the significance of having a productivity mindset, be it a production or a manufacturing or a services industry, and how this actually caters to different requirements in every organization. We've built then the discussion around the 10 webinar series, and out of which the first one we started talking about on standardization improves productivity. And I think we went in actually discussing and deliberating on those points on what kind of standardization are we talking about and how it is beyond just a checklist of items that we talk about. From there we
Yeah.
had moved to 5S, and where in 5S we actually talked about the 5S and the significance of each one of them. I want to share, Sagar, the desk that I work on has transformed, and I'm going to share you the before and after photograph of that. So thank you for sharing the 5S. After the learning, after that session last week is where I actually completely revamped my desk. It is very clean, very welcoming, and I can actually get the right thing the right way I want it, including the pen stand that you had suggested.
Oh, brilliant.
So I have actually made that happen for myself, and thank you for adding that value. And then from there we moved on and we discussed about the creating accountability and how creating accountability is very crucial towards building productivity mindset. And I actually want to request you, Sagar, the simple methodology that you told us last time about creating accountability. I would want to request you to talk about those what does that simple mean before we actually get into the session for today.
Sure, Kapesh. Why not? I mean, it always helps to have a recap. So, the simple methodology for creating accountability means simple, which is S, set expectations, I, which is invite commitment, M, which is measure the progress, because we all know only the things that get measured can be improved. Then
Perfect.
comes P. Now you've measured it and you want improvement. Of course, you have to give feedback. So P is provide feedback. After all that is done, you also need to know that you have to link it to the consequences, which means L. Now, linking it to consequences is only because it gives a positive push, a positive momentum for people who actually want rewards, recognition. Somebody would want mentoring, somebody would want fear. So, all that can be used in a positive way, which is linked to consequences. Last but not the least, the E part, which is evaluate effectiveness. Now you've put everything into place. I'm sure you want it to be effective. And that's where the E part comes, evaluating effectiveness. Simple tool, simple tips.
Very good. I think that's one of the simplest way of defining accountability or creating accountability, within yourself and with your teams. And
Sure.
I think that's something which was a good takeaway. So from there, we created an interest in our audience last week, Sagar, where we spoke about can quality be inspected? And I think
Absolutely.
with that question, you'd actually even created a poll.
Yes, I did.
So, so I would rather give it to you and tell us more about the poll and tell us what the thoughts are.
So the poll went really amazing on LinkedIn with nearly 193, 1093 to be specific, 1093 people viewing it across the nation, and out of which 37 people voted for it. And the data is really, really interesting, Kalpesh. So as you can see on my screen, 89% feel quality can be inspected into a product. Now, that is a very interesting data that, so many people think that quality can be inspected into a product. So let me ask all of us a question. Will you inspect the product or the quality? You're on mute, my dear friend.
We will inspect the product, Sagar.
Of course, yes. So you will inspect the product as per the desired specification of the customer or of the market. You will also ensure and verify that the product is meeting the quality standards set by the customer and set by your quality department or
Mhm.
set by your management. Now, what happens when we do that? We have the product classified as okay, not okay, or nothing else, right? It's only two, okay and not okay. So when the product is okay, it's okay with the quality, it goes for sale. When the product is not okay, you can either rework, reject, or sell it at a loss, which means it's the product that is being inspected for the quality that is being produced. To make it simple, quality cannot be inspected, but the product can be inspected for the quality that is inherent in the product using the process, which means we are all inspecting the product and not the quality. The quality is already inbuilt. To make it more simpler, there was a viral video of a farmer having a jugaad technology of segregating his pomegranate using two sticks. Have you
Okay.
seen that, Kalpesh?
No, no, I haven't. I haven't.
Fair enough. So that went viral on WhatsApp and LinkedIn, where people were appreciating a farmer sitting with bucket full of pomegranates, and he had two thin bamboo sticks in a way where the larger pomegranate would fall first, the smaller would fall later, and the smaller would still go on. Or in the reverse way, the smaller would fall first. As it goes, it expands, and the larger one would fall at the last bucket. So what he was doing is actually segregating the products, is what we see.
Okay.
In terms of quality, he was actually inspecting the product being produced by the tree and segregating it based on the quality of the product. Now, taking that example, if you go into a market and you are offered three types of pomegranate, one which looks good size, red in color, shine. The second one is a smaller size, of course, red in color. The third one is a little bit plumped, soft in some way, and a very small size. Of course, the price varies accordingly. Which one you pick?
That first category,
The first category. And why is that?
because of the size, because of the look. You said it looks red pinkish. It is you know it is large and looks perfect.
What you mean to say is value for money,
Yes, value for money. Yes.
right? So we look for a product which is value for our money because we are a customer. So what you are looking is you're looking at a good product of a good quality and you're picking that up. Now, what that person did while he was segregating them is the things which are of poor quality, he was selling it at a lower price, and the customer was not happy buying that product. It was only out of saving money or some other parameter that he would pick up that product. The same goes out with an example of Steve Jobs. He always told and talked about building the quality of the product within and not something which is outside, because if the interior is good, the exterior will automatically look very good. I remember an article which talks about Steve Jobs. He rejected the PLC board only because the design and the wiring inside it was not in a straight line, and that cost him billions. But he did that because he believed that if the interiors are not good, the exterior will not look good.
Wow,
And we all
that's
know Steve Jobs and Apple, the story, right?
yes, absolutely.
So that's what exactly it means. Build the right product, create the right product, and quality will be achieved. So now, as we know that if it's the product that can be inspected and quality cannot, quality should be produced, there are certain tools and techniques which can be used to ensure the quality output is achieved.
Hmm. Wonderful, Sagar. I think that's a perfect example that you gave about Steve Jobs, and we've, as you rightly said, we've all seen the kind of difference these passionate leaders bring in. You know, Steve Jobs being one of them. You talk about a lot of these leaders who've taken their organizations to the level they are today wouldn't have been possible without their commitment to have a productivity mindset and without their commitment to quality, uh, as an outcome. So which, all said and done, it's a very fair point that we make when it comes to talking about the whole quality piece and the inspection part. But what are these? What is inspection? I mean, what is, rather, maybe if I say, what is quality to begin with?
Okay. So, see, quality to begin with can be termed in a very, very simple example, Kalpesh. Quality is something which is desired by the customer. Quality is something that is looked upon in terms of the features, the specifications, in terms of the type of the product that you're building. Because you have a Maruti that's available, you have a Hyundai that's available, and you have a Mercedes that's available. The quality which is perceived by the person who is desiring a Maruti is different than the person who is actually looking for Mercedes. When I'm not demeaning the person, but I'm saying the perspective of two different people, two different customers can be different for different product. So quality is perceived, but at the same time there are specifications which need to be inherited, built within the product, which brings us to a point that inspection is also important to ensure the quality, the process, and the product are engineered in such a way that the process gives out good quality products.
Beautiful. I think that was very well explained, Sagar. And I go back to what you said. I think so. I would probably, in my what I occurred to me is that so quality is actually value for money, because
Absolutely.
then what you're talking about is what you're willing to pay is the kind of, is what you're getting in return. And if you're getting in return of for what you're paying is where you feel that you've got a quality product. um,
Brilliant.
so, Sagar, I would like to take a moment and welcome Anil and Mayur, and thank you for being there with us. For all our sessions, it is always humbling to see you guys there with us when we do this program. So thank you. From comments perspective, we will not be able to respond to any comments right now, but we'll respond to all the comments, after the session is done. So stay tuned
Sure.
with us and keep putting your questions and comments. We will pick that up during the session. Great. So Sagar, you spoke about quality, but now tell me what do you mean by inspection? A little more details about, can quality be inspected? So what does inspection mean to you when you put that topic?
So the topic was actually to invite the thought process for people that can quality be inspected. And as I explained, that it's actually the product that we are inspecting and not the quality. The quality is the output of the process. So when we are actually doing inspection in real terms, that inspection, I'm going to come up very hard, but that inspection for me is like postmortem, because that inspection will only tell you if the product is okay or not okay. And when it's not okay, it's heartbreaking for a person like me who is talking about business excellence and productivity, is because when the product is not okay, you're actually inviting a lot of problems. You're inviting cost of poor quality. We will talk about it. But inspection looks something like this, Kalpesh, which we talk about regularly in Six Sigma. So as you can see, there are two cases. Need not to worry if the picture is not clear. Just check the icon. The top line, you have one, two, three, four, five, six inspectors before the delivery is done, and you can only see that there is only one truck which is delivered. And on the top there is a chart which shows like a mountain, which is quite spread, and it's quite outgoing. That mountain is actually known as Six Sigma in our language, but I'll keep it as a mountain for a layman term, that you can see a heap of mountain where you have some lines which we will explain you. But there are six inspectors, which means you are paying six people the salary to inspect the product. Now what happens in inspection is, people have a fear to prove that they are good inspectors. So sometimes, just to show to the people, because of the human approach, they will take out certain products saying that it's not okay. And so some of the times, because you have inspectors and you have that thing, the mindset of the operators is theek hai na yaar, inspection mein they'll check it, they'll check it in the inspection, will pass the inspection. So if there's any problem, inspection team will catch it. What you're doing is, you're paying six people salary, you're inviting more and more products to be inspected, which means more and more rejections to be done. And the approach and the mindset of the people on the shop floor is, fair enough, there is inspection, they will catch it if there's a problem. Wherein the true thing is, which you see down, there is absolutely no inspection, because earlier that company has done inspection, collected the data, implemented certain tools and techniques to ensure that their mountain that you see, the Six Sigma mountain that you see, is within the limit of upper limit and lower limit of the specs, and they work within the centerpiece, which means every single product that comes out is of good quality, which means they are able to send not one, but one, two, three, four trucks. So that
Beautiful.
is the impact. So when we talk about the impact of inspection, it comes as impact of cost of poor quality. Now, this figure, I think almost every single person has seen the theory of iceberg. Everybody knows what is visible and what is not visible. The same way, cost of poor quality is, you can only see the rework, rejection, scrap, but what you're not seeing is customer dissatisfaction, the morale which is reducing of the people, the productivity that is going down, and so on and so forth. And this is what disturbs me as an individual, that people are only seeing that, okay, it's a rework, but when you talk about rework, you're talking about man, machine, manpower, emotions, everything together.
That's well said, Sagar. Because I'm completely relating to what you said about cost of poor quality, and I'm amazed with the culture of this whole quality monitoring process that is on. And I'm just thinking right now, as you rightly said. So the place where I'm consulting, when there is a product that they receive, uh, so there is an inward quality that happens. Then there is a process quality check that happens. Then there is an outward quality that happens. And then there is a inward quality by the client, where the product is given, it happens. And at times I have actually seen that the customs has cleared and we've received the product, but for the product to actually go on the production floor takes that 24 hours, because it needs to be inspected, and the that quality check, or whatever they call it, has to be done before it is passed on to the production.
Yes,
And I'm absolutely relating to the number of checks, and therefore the number of people, and therefore the impact on the overall delay that causes to the business, and it's all dead money.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, imagine if the supplier was producing a good quality product which need not have inspection. And sometimes, Kalpesh, we will definitely talk about it in the coming sessions when we talk about the data analysis and the data thing. There are certain suppliers where you've been inspecting their product for donkey's years and you haven't found a quality defect because they are working at a good Six Sigma level or even Five Sigma level. But still, the people will not go into that analytics. They will not go into that data intelligence of using that data and reducing the frequency of inspection just because it is said by the management. Nobody uses their brain and they just go on doing the inspection. And that's exactly where we talk about building productivity mindset. It's a step by step procedure to understand all the parameters within the culture of the organization, within the quality management systems, and then building that productivity mindset, which leads to nothing else but autonomous work culture. And what you're talking, Kalpesh, is absolutely bang on that people need to use their intelligence, creativity, and think for different solutions, think out of the box. Or you make your box bigger, any which way which is comfortable to you. But ensure that you are using the data points that are captured to improve your systems, improve your processes, improve the output of the people, thereby increasing the productivity. Now, imagine if from 30 years you're buying a product from someone, you haven't found a defect, you've been inspecting it every single batch. Why not stop inspection and make it into once a month for now? Do it for 6 months. If you still don't find it, increase it to once in 3 months. Still watch it for a year, go on for 6 months, go on for a year. And after certain times, you just go on for random check once in 3 months, 3 years. Now imagine the reduction of pressure on the teams who is doing that inspection. Brilliant, right? They would be able to invest that time in so many other things. You will save money, you will save resources. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
And that's
no,
what,
absolutely.
yeah, so that's
So
what I work with organizations to reduce their non-valuated activity, identify the non-valuated activity, and increase their productivity. And the organizations that I worked with in last few years, Kalpesh, you would be shocked to know there are certain organizations who are doing -10 bottom line per month. As on today, in the fourth year, we have touched 80 lakhs plus in the bottom line, from -10 to 80 plus in the bottom line. Now that was done not overnight. It took 4 years, but that's a good jump, isn't it?
yes, that is absolutely. No, I think, and well said. And Sagar, I can relate to this one example that you just mentioned. And I'm talking about when I used to be the head of training and quality for managing operations for a multinational bank. The beauty was that it was a mandate from the risk team that we do eight monitoring, or eight as a sample size monitoring, for every associate who is there into the unit. And we had 450 people in that one unit. And the debate that we used to have was the same, that out of that 450 people, if you put a risk of saying, okay, if you put a compliance saying, okay, eight calls to be monitored per associate per month, that is not leading us anywhere. Because if I really want to monitor, what I really need to do is I want to look at people who are consistent performers and people who are non consistent performers. People who are consistent performers have been giving 100 on 100 on 100 every month. I would probably reduce the number of sampling I do for them, versus people who are making those errors, is where I probably give more focus, more attention, and give more hand holding to them and invest that time there. And I could actually relate to this point when you spoke about the inspection. So a very wonderful point, Sagar.
Thank you.
So, Sagar, that brings me to the next point, which is, so what are the different stages of inspection that people have? Like I just spoke about one example that I could see in a real life consulting that I do, but you've been in the manufacturing industry for a long, long time. So what are those stages of inspection?
So, Kalpesh, normally the stages which you rightly said, or are commonly known as incoming inspection, online inspection, pilot lot inspection. Design and development. There are various inspections in that design and development, which people call as to have more and more data points. They do certain inspection to collect CP case study or MSA study, and apart from that is also the final product inspection and WIP inspection. So various touch points, and there are certain companies who will have a maker and checker concept. So every maker has a checker, which means inspection at every stage. And in the automotive, there's a funny terminology. It's absolutely funny, Kalpesh. They will say 100% inspection. Now, where in the world you will actually do 100% inspection? It's not practically possible, because there are certain inspection parameters. For example, if I tell you that if I have to inspect the product for elongation or breaking strength for that matter, which means at what strength the product breaks. If I have to do 100% inspection, I have to take all the product that I have produced and test them for breaking strength. All the products break apart. Then what do I sell? Right? So,
Yeah,
the terminology of 100% inspection is actually a joke, is because inspection has to be done at sampling. There are inspection standards. I'm not denying the fact. I know some people would be watching it and who would be masters, and they would say that there are parameters and there are standards and there are ISO standards available for doing inspection. But I'm just talking about a term, a mindset that people have, that they will say, oh, you have to do 100% inspection. What is 100% inspection? Am I really going to do 100% inspection? No. All I will say is, yes, sir, we will do 100% inspection. Don't worry. Possible? Or is it just a psychological feel good factor? A question for all of us to think.
yeah. No, I think as
So,
you rightly said, Sagar, I would only say that there are certain stages and there are certain reasons why people do what they do, and there are probably the kind of products which go through an 100% inspection. So I'll leave that to the company on why they're doing it, and probably the reason they want to build the kind of controls and measures and build that brand trust, which is fair. But I think what I want to highlight is about bringing that productivity mindset to actually use that data intelligence, which you spoke on. On where do you need to do it? How are you doing it? Do you even need uh, so revisiting that strategy, revisiting that approach that you have, at times it helps in dividing on what you rightly use the terms as the value add and non-value add activities, because your non-value add activities are something that is a huge cost, and that can actually help you reduce your effort and money on that part, and move that towards the value add part.
absolutely, Kalpesh.
Great.
So that's exactly where we have to talk about what are the tools, what are the techniques that will help people to create good quality product, which will reduce their efforts in inspection. Because by the time 30 minutes into the session, we all know the answer, that can quality be inspected? No, the product can be inspected. Now, how do you create that quality product? By ensuring that your processes are tighter, your manpower is trained, you have a good culture. But to do that, you need certain tools and techniques to collect some data point, have some study done, work on the projects of process improvement, which is an ongoing, continuous process. So that brings us to the most important topic, Kalpesh, that we are covering today. That can quality be inspected? The answer is no. The product can be inspected, quality can be produced. So to produce quality, you need very many tools. But today we are going to talk about 7 QC tools. What's
Okay.
your thought on that, Kalpesh?
No, I think that's it'll be good because I think in every session, one thing that we've done, Sagar, and we've left all our friends and all our audience with is the how part and the actual applicability part of anything that we're talking. So it's not only about a wisdom or a philosophy that we're talking about, but we're actually talking about how you can actually build that productivity mindset, use these tools. So a perfect transition into how and what tools can you actually use. But Sagar, just before that, there's a question which is popping in my mind, and I'm sure a lot of people have this question. What's the difference between QC and QA?
Amazing. So while you ask me that, let me pull out something from my Pandora's box and show it to people about what is QC and QA, right? So there you go, Kalpesh. I think I'm just pulling something for all of us to look at, and yeah, I think that's on my screen. So
Yeah.
quality control and quality assurance. So what we are talking about is basically, what is quality control? It focuses on the product, while quality control or quality assurance talks about the focus on the process, right? The control mechanism is mainly about being reactive, right? But the assurance part is more of proactive approach. The same way, so quality control talks about more on the product part, or how you can control product, how you can find defects, what are the different ways of testing, what are the different ways of doing something. Whereas the assurance part talks about preventive, proactive measures, doing quality audits, checking on the processes, working out on the processes, improving the processes, so on and so forth. So that's the beauty of this process, Kalpesh, and that's the beauty of you know understanding about quality process and quality product and quality assurance. So quality control is more of a product, whereas quality assurance is more about the processes.
Perfect. No, well said. I think, Sagar, this is lovely. I love the fourth line, which is find the difference between finding defects versus preventing defects.
Yeah.
Because finding defects at the end of the day is lost, right? You can't do anything about it. It's
Postmortem,
already,
as I say.
yeah. It's a postmortem. So great. So with that, let's get into talking about the quality tools. So looking
Sure.
forward to learn those quality tools.
So the quality tools basically not something new. It's been a very old methodology that has been implemented by the manufacturing, service industry, and various other industries across the globe. So, what are those 7 QC tools? I'll list out the QC tools and then we will go one by one on it. The first one is process flow diagrams. The second one is about check sheets and not checklist. There's a difference between checklist and check sheet. The third one talks about histogram, Pareto analysis, cause and effect diagram, scatter plots, and control charts. So the first one that we talk about, Kalpesh, is going to be process flow diagrams. Any idea? Have you seen process flow diagram anywhere across, or have you actually used a process flow diagram somewhere? Have you seen that?
Yes, we've used that, Sagar.
Brilliant.
So
Yes, Kalpesh.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
So if we all have used a process flow diagram, I'll give you a very simple example, Kalpesh, of a process flow diagram which all of us use. We put alarm to wake up in the morning. When the alarm rings in the morning, we hit the snooze button. So before we hit that snooze button in the process flow diagram, there is a decision box as a rhombus that we see, which tells us, yes, I want to wake up, then we wake up. But when we say, no, I don't want to wake up, is when we hit the snooze button.
Fair.
So, so that's the easiest way to explain the process flow diagram. Apart from that, jokes apart, process flow diagram actually helps us to identify the flow of the process, identify the bottlenecks in the process, improves communication. Now, when I say it improves communication, I would also say it improves productivity, for which I have a live example. I was working with a call center in 2008, and they had a process of calling the customers, and they had a script given to all the people. When the customers used to say that, yes, I want to do this, they go on to the next point. And when they say no, they go to a second question or a third question. So it used to be a series of yes and a no, yes and a no. And the person who is actually on the call has to listen to the customer, analyze the answer, read the script, and identify the question, and also reply back to the customer, which was like superhuman. And the calls were monitored because the calls have to be finished in certain time. There was a tag defined, and the productivity was being measured, and it was very challenging for people to read the script, analyze the questions, analyze the answers, rephrase the questions. And it was a challenging thing. What we did was very simple. We converted that script into a flow chart, and that was also color coded, which means all the yeses were identified as a yes on the decision box, which you can see on my screen. As a yes, it could be green, and if it was a no, the lines and the thing would be red. So the person had a small process flow diagram in front of him, and the yes and the no were supported by the relative questions. Kalpesh, you won't believe, the call that used to take 7 minutes and 30 seconds reduced down to 4 minutes and 20 seconds. The results of the customers, the conversion, which was 23%, went up to 43% just by implementing the process flow diagram. And that's the power of a process flow diagram. It helps you to make decisions faster, improves communication, improves productivity, and helps you find the bottleneck in the process.
Beautiful. I think very well explained, Sagar. That's awesome.
So that's the first tool of the 7 QC tools. Going to the next one, which is check sheet. Now, when we talk about check sheet, I'm sure we all in our early childhood days have played in the maths class where we used to do 1, 2, 3, 4, cross is the fifth one. Yes, Kalpesh, do you remember that?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, what happens in the manufacturing industry? Of course, in the IT industry and other industries, there are differences. But I want to stress more upon the MSMEs and SMEs, because they are the people who are actually struggling a lot when it comes to automation, AI, ML, and creating that data. So, to support them, the easiest way is using this check sheet. As you can see on my screen, there's a check sheet which talks about the data points which have been created, like tensile strength, yield strength, elongation, effective diameter, and effective weight. And we have created the chart for it. I will put it more further for people to have a look at it. And what happened, or what we used to do, is we used to give them this sheet, and all they have to do is just keep putting up a tally mark. Now, what happens when they put this tally mark? The life is made easy for them, where they don't have to really think about what kind of a telemark they are putting, but it helps them to understand that they just have to put the telemark, and just by looking at the telemark, the quality person, the quality team would be able to identify, okay, the tensile strength is the problem, and that's the highest defect that is occurring, and we need to work on it. So that was so easy and so comfortable. And these data points, Kalpesh, can be again tracked back to the quality department, where they can actually work on these parameters, and work out a way to improve the process, improve the quality, and they can identify that tensile strength is the maximum problem, for which you don't need AI and ML. Of course, there are AI and ML which are being used, but for the people who are on the shop floor, for a easy and a quick action or a quick reaction to take the preventive measure, these tool as a check sheet come very handy. You're on mute, Kalpesh.
I am so sorry. So I was
No
saying, no,
problem.
amazing. I think I've never come across a check sheet. So, but I think that was very well explained. I can see the use of the same.
Yeah. So that brings us to the next point, which is histogram. Any idea, Kalpesh, about histogram? Anything that you want to share about histogram, or you want to share about histogram? Have you seen? Where have you seen, or anything?
We have used histogram. I have used histogram into our organization, and we used to use that Sagar majorly to look at the performance of our dialer.
Mm-hmm.
So it used to be in the BPS services, and we used to have a whole team where a file will be
Mm-hmm.
uploaded on the dialer, and then the first pass and the second pass and the third pass. And every hour, we would look at the number of calls that were made, the number of contacts that were established, and the number of promises that were taken. So for every hour, we would monitor with regards to the effectiveness, and then
Yes.
compare the number of calls dialed by the dialer for the entire shift, and then the same thing for the contacts and the same thing for conversion. And we would then
Mm-hmm.
use that data points to look at which is the best timings to get the right contact, which is the best timing to get the promises, and do some intelligence with each other.
Wow. I mean, that's really cool, Kalpesh. That's a very good example. So histogram basically looks something like this. And again, it's not something which is difficult. All of us have used and created histogram if we go back to our 8th standard algebra. If you remember your 8th standard algebra, we have created histogram to find the mean. Yes. So everything that we're talking about is a very simple tool, a very simple methodology, which we have all used in our school days. That means we have learned it actually, but just because of the jargons that come up as 7QC tools, we feel, wow, that's a QC tool that we have to create. But it's very simple. So histogram talks about the upper limit, the lower limit, the mean, and histograms are basically used to identify or to understand the spread of the data that is there. It also helps to understand the skewedness of the histogram. Is it skewed on the right? Is it skewed on the left? Is it wavery, or is it having proper structure like we saw it in the earlier example of inspection? That mountain was nothing but an histogram. So overall, it helps us to understand the distribution of data. And to give an example about a histogram, this kind of histogram are actually used when we want to find out, for example, that which product is doing good in the market. Let's say if you want to talk about defects, which is the defect which is causing the maximum loss, or during the day, or for that matter, let's say if somebody is producing a paper with a certain length, they will manufacture that paper in a continuous way, and they can measure at different areas what is the thickness of that paper that is being produced. Because in the paper industry, Kalpesh, always remember, the higher the thickness, there's a higher weightage of paper that is going on, and with more weightage of paper, more money, right? So they have to ensure that the thickness is fine, so that they don't waste too much money. So for example, if I can show you that these are the various data points, and they will try and capture the thickness of all the various data points, and then they will put a histogram of different thicknesses at different width of the paper, and that
Mhm.
will help them to identify the process capability of that machine to produce consistent thickness across the width of the paper. Now that can be applied on all things. Like we talk about the service industry, So there can be a histogram done for all the people who are doing calls, various calls that they are doing, the time that they are taking, and during for the duration of the day. For example, morning the people would be charged and they would be doing quick calls. Afternoon would be a little sluggish. Post lunch a little sluggish, and evening it will be even more sluggish. At that time, the histogram would appear from top down to this way. It will be skewed on the left, which means the starting of the day will have a different output, end of the day would have different output. So histogram helps to understand the process capability.
Wonderful, Sagar. And as you rightly said, so we used to use this for various contexts. So one, we used to use it for, as I said, the number of calls done. Then one of the other things that we started doing was to monitor the quality scores in each hour. So as you rightly said, what we found out was that the quality scores in the morning were very high, but towards the lunchtime, when people are wanting to just complete those calls and go out for lunch, their performances would drop, and then it would again pick up in the afternoon. So we've actually used this to study those data points that we would collect and then make those improvements accordingly.
Perfect. Absolutely. Yes, Kalpesh. So that brings us to the next topic, Pareto analysis. Guys and listeners, please type it in the chat box if you have heard the word Pareto or 80/20, right? 80% of the wealth is available with 20% of the people. We've all heard that analogy. 80% of crimes are done by 20% of the goons, or so on and so forth. So, what is this 80/20, or what is Pareto analysis? Is what I'm going to talk about. So, Pareto analysis is nothing but a workflow diagram which helps us to identify and select the priority. So, when we are talking about priority, when we talk about taking up the priority, it's the 80/20 rule. It's the Pareto analysis that will help you to identify the priority. It talks about trivial many, vital few. That brings me to the point which I will pull out a graph. So, Kalpesh, if I give you an example, if you see on the graph right in front of you, let me
Mm-hmm.
just expand it more so it's easy for
Yeah,
everyone to see. So,
right.
as you can see here, Kalpesh, it's talking about, let's say we are taking an example of a chips manufacturing company.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the printing error, seal issue, weight, and the pack color. So these are the defects that they had where 200 or more pieces were going out for printing error. The seal issue ranged between 150. Weightage more was somewhere between 50 to 100. And the pack color was minuscule. Now, looking at this data, Kalpesh, if I have the liberty to ask you the question, what is the main pain point for this company,
The printing error
right?
is the topmost
It's a
priority. Yeah.
no-brainer. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a no-brainer when we do the Pareto. And the orange line that you're seeing is actually the Pareto analysis, because if you can see at the 80% mark, the line is actually bending a little, which means the 80/20, the 80% is because of the printing error. But now here comes the importance of understanding the data, using the right data, and evaluating the right thing, which means that yes, these are the errors. Printing error looks to be the most impactful in terms of quantity of rejection. But what is the bottom line that we talk about? The bottom line that we talk about is the value, the impact on money, and the third would be impact of brand. So let's first understand the impact of money. So let's say if I populate the impact of money based on the individual parameters, the graph will turn like this. So now, Kalpesh, if I may ask you, which is the most priority that you would work on?
Now I'll work on weight more.
Correct?
Yeah.
Because the impact of printing error is just below 2000, but
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
impact of the weight going higher is more than 2,800 approximately, which means that if we are doing the Pareto chart analysis correctly, if we are actually plotting the right data, if we are actually capturing the right data point, using the data intelligence to understand which data to use when, we need to understand, is it the value of the product? Is it the branding of the product? Which is impacting us more? Which is impacting the bottom line? Sometimes what looks on the surface is not the reality. So on the surface it looked that printing errors are the highest, and that is bringing us a lot of rejection, and the whole company starts working on the printing error and refining the machine. But let's say if they take 3 months to resolve the printing error, imagine 3000 crores per month will be lost because they are putting more weight in the product, and they would not work on that because the Pareto is showing different thing. The minute you
Yeah.
convert that into value, it changes. Now, printing error was, I've not defined, it's a hypothetical thing, but let's say it was a packet of Lays. And if in the printing error, if the L was not printed and it was only AYS, forget everything. I would only work on the printing error because the branding is going out, the visibility is going out. So, as I said, Kalpesh, you have to define it according to the situation of the organization, situation, placement of the product, and work on doing the Pareto. So, what I've shown is how to do a Pareto, which is very simple. Put the data points in Excel, go into Excel, click on insert statistical chart, and you can create your own Pareto. So what I am trying to say is anybody can create a Pareto, but
So, sir,
only few, sorry Kalpesh, so
hmm,
only a few would be able to create a Pareto which will add value to the organization. So it's not creating Pareto. It's easy. Anybody can do it. Which Pareto to create is
yeah.
important.
I think very well said, Sagar. And I have an example to share here. Is in the quality uh, checklists that we used to have, and earlier it used to be talking about different parameters. That have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? Have you done this? But as we actually observed that, and we started discussing with a client, we actually started looking at what are the things that are non-negotiable. And when we say non-negotiable, these were the things which are related to either compliance or which has the most amount of impact, the value impact, versus whether you've said, a good morning versus saying a good afternoon, which is also an error. But as you rightly said, that by mistake, if you address somebody as good afternoon instead of good morning, even if you have 200 people who have done that error versus two errors which are on ombudsman level, which can lead to a customer complaint and getting the bank I was working for into a trouble, then that's more critical for me versus addressing the other part. So hence
Yeah,
that Pareto or that data in itself will in itself it makes sense, but it will make more intelligent analysis if you actually compare that with what costs more or what is the bigger impact for your organization.
true, very true, very true.
Okay, great. So let's move on to the next tool, Sagar. That's, I think it's interesting to know about these tools, and some of these tools which I've used about 10, 12, 15 years back. It's a very good recap that I'm getting through a lot of these tools. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely, because these tools are like, they're never going to die, because let it be AI or ML or data intelligence, these tools will form the base of those programs, because capturing the data, capturing the tool, using the tool is all going to be there. So, Kalpesh, we are at 54 minutes, and I think we might have to stretch a little bit today to cover the topics, because the comments that I'm getting from the audience is going to be interesting. So, for the audiences, your wish is our command, and we will stretch a little more and complete all the 7QC tools. Anil Goswami has reached out to me on YouTube, and he's like, no, no, you can't do that. So, sure, Anil sir, we will do that. So, going on to the fifth one is, sorry, the fifth one is cause and effect, or it's also known as fishbone diagram, or we can also call it as Ishikawa diagram. So when we talk about Ishikawa diagram, that's basically cause and effect analysis, where the cause can be because of the four M's, which is men, method, material, money, plus the environment. This actually helps us to brainstorm the ideas, the effects, the things that are happening to cause that defect. So there would be a effect which is a problem, but what are the causes? And the reason why this is known as a fishbone diagram, as you can see on the picture, Kalpesh, it actually has a structure of a fishbone and the substructures. So fishbone diagram actually helps us to analyze the problem, to understand the problem, divide it into different parameters of the main causes, the sub causes, and then following the fishbone diagram, you can also have Excel sheet where you identify what are the control mechanisms for those causes that are probable root cause for the defect, and those control mechanism, how are they actually active? Are they active or are they not active? Are they causing effectiveness to reduce the defect? If yes, they go out of the window. So basically, the set of tools is helping organizations to understand where is this defect coming from and what are the different causes. So this tool is to be used only when you don't know the idea, or when you don't know the exact cause of the problem and you want to have a preventive action done. You do a fishbone diagram. Going to the next, Kalpesh, is a scatter plot. Now,
Yeah.
scatter plots, we have done it again in our ninth standard or 10th standard algebra geometry, when we were trying to plot those graphs and understand the correlation between the two types or the two variables. Now, that can be a positive correlation, a negative correlation, a highly, highly positive correlation, or it can be, just a scattered chart or zero correlation, because as you can see on the last chart, there is no correlation anywhere. And these charts or these plots are being used, Kalpesh, when you actually need to find the real cause or the real correlation. So once you have done the fishbone analysis and you want to have the analysis done about the scatter plots, about what is the correlation between this cause and this effect, which means that whenever there is a temperature increase in the machine, the product deviation is occurring. Now, how do you find it? You only find it when you do the scatter plot diagram. You
Okay.
note the temperature for every product or every output, and you also know the shape of the product. Now, every time when you plot this, the temperature can be used, or temperature data points can be gathered during the AI and the ML instruments that can be put on the picture, and the data can be captured out, wherein the dimensions of the product can be done manually. So every single punch, what is the temperature? What is the air pressure? Or what is that thing that is impacting the product? And once you
Okay.
have that, you will be able to identify the root cause, that, oh, it's not the temperature, but it's the air pressure which is deforming the product. And that's very helpful when you actually start implementing those tools. And taking one more point ahead, Kalpesh, brings me to the control chart. So now when we talk about the control chart, Kalpesh, it's very simple. Let me give you an example. You want a driver, and you have given an advertisement for the driver, and a driver comes to you and says, sir, I know driving. You take him for a test drive on a 8-lane road. He drives perfectly between the sixth lane and the second lane, which means he is driving like this. So it's a 8-lane road, and he's driving right from sixth lane to the second lane. Okay. You tell him, okay, fair enough, we have done the test, you have a second driver. The second driver comes again, and he drives from the fourth lane to the fifth lane. So he's driving only on the fourth and the fifth, fourth and the fifth, fourth and the fifth. And then you also test one more driver, and he drives exactly on the fourth lane, straight line fourth lane, and he's driving consistently on the fourth lane. Now this was a test. Now I will give you a real world scenario. You only have a single lane road. Which driver would you choose?
The third one, who went only on the fourth lane.
So that's the beauty of control chart. You have an upper limit, as you can see on my chart, and you have a lower limit. The product can always go between the upper and the lower limit and play within those limits. It will still be an okay product. It will be still a good quality product. But the minute you see the red mark, which is the product coming out of that quality mark, it's rejected, which means we as consultants or we as quality people, we try to have the upper limit and the lower limit, and we work within those upper limits and lower limits, and we create our own marks. So which means the final marks are like 6 sigma given by the customer. You bring it down to the 3 sigma plus minus and work on that roads, which means you become the driver who is driving on the fourth lane and the fifth lane, which means you don't have to worry if you're working on those dimensions, because every single time you punch in the product, every single time you punch it in, and you're going to get the right product.
No, absolutely. And I think, Sagar, this is also very widely used. We used to use this to find out the special causes and the common causes, and to look at what we need to address. If I can take a quick minute to explain this on how we had used this. So how we had used this, no, Sagar, is that our shift used to start at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. Okay. Now we we had people who would walk in between a 6:25 to a 6:35 to a 7 o'clock to a 7:30, and we wanted to identify that, what is that limit with the, Anil Goswami, yes, perfect, the upper control limit and the lower control limit, the UCP and LCP, to look at what is the special causes. And that's when we actually came across that, okay, anybody who comes between 6:25 to 6:35 is acceptable, is within the limits. But anybody who's coming at a 7 or somebody who's coming at a 6, then that's a special cause, and we actually then looked at addressing those to bring them into that fourth lane, as you said, from the deviation from the second lane to the sixth lane, trying to narrow it down so that everybody remains in that fourth lane. Within that, it's fine for them to fluctuate, a 2 minute plus minus there. So that actually helped us create that discipline on the entire shift to improve the productivity.
Sure. Yes.
Over to you, Sagar.
So
Yeah.
that's the beauty, Kalpesh, and I think we've justified again to complete our session within 1 hour. We've been accountable, and we've given the 7QC tools to the people. But apart from 7QC tools, there are various tools that everybody can use. They can even use 6 sigma to identify the root causes and work on the process improvement projects. Of course, they all can connect with both of us, and we are happy to help the organizations. 7QC tools is not a dead methodology. It's still alive. It's still kicking. Use the right AI, use the right ML in case if you want to use, create data points, create touch points to improve your processes, ensure that your products remain within the fourth lane and the fifth lane, and you produce quality and not inspect quality. So thank you, Kalpesh. It was an
Perfect.
amazing session. And what's the next one, Kalpesh?
Great. So I was just going to say that, Sagar, before we close, I just want to tell the audience that, you know there is always this whole messaging about getting it right the first time. And we've heard beautiful concepts and how economies and organizations have created cultures of getting it first time right. Well, the next session that we're going to do is talking about first time rights, talk about some best practices, talk about how we've used that into the work that we're doing. And stay tuned, because we're going to talk about the first time right next Thursday, 5 p.m. Stay tuned, and stay with us. Thank you, all of you who've been here. Sagar, I saw about more than 20 people, on LinkedIn. Seen Anil Goswami, who's there on YouTube, and I think a lot of audience on Facebook who've been with us.
Yep.
So thank you to everyone who are joining us every Thursday for this recording. We appreciate
Thank you,
that.
everyone.
Stay safe, stay connected. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.